gentlemen, the time is 9:22 and the board is reconvened in open session. We'll first consider action on our closed session items. Mr. George?
Yes, Madam President. I move to appoint Elizabeth Williams to the position of elementary school principal and to approve her as a professional development and appraisal system PDAS appraiser for 2015-16.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. George and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Burdine?
Yes, Madam President. I move to approve the lease agreement with Pamela Printing Company for real property located at 550 Julie Rivers Drive, Sugar Land, Texas, subject to the approval by the district's legal counsel.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Burdine and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. That concludes our closed session action items. Do you need something? Okay. I'll share with you. We're now on to action. Action item 6A is the comprehensive annual financial report. And Mr. Bassett, can you please introduce that?
Yes,
who we
ma'am.
have here tonight in our...
Thank you, Ms. James. Members of the board, we have with us our auditors from Whitley Penn. Mr. Christopher Bro is the partner, and then Guadalupe Garcia is the senior manager. And they made a presentation, the full presentation to the audit committee late last month, and they have some information to share with the board today.
Thank you. Sure, I'm on here.
Yes.
Madam President, members of the board, we do have a presentation for you. We have gone over the financial statements with the audit committee, and we've summarized that. The document is 100 and something pages long. We will not bring you through the entire document tonight. You're quite welcome. Let's roll through here real quickly. As Steve mentioned, I am the audit partner on this engagement, the concurring partner with Selena Miller, who heads up our public sector group. She looks over us. Lupe Garcia is our senior manager. Lauren Nelson was our senior, and we had a couple of CPAs for staff on the engagement here. And that's just to let you know who we have working on this. Our approach is a team-based approach. We have active participation at all levels, for the partner to the staff, from the superintendent to the staff at the district as well. We use a risk-based approach in the audit, and that we look for, we take a look at what's going on and try to figure out what's going wrong, and take a look at those areas, or what could possibly go wrong in those areas. The district will do, as most districts will do, 95% of everything just about right. There's 5% areas that are going to lead to more risk, and we look at the risk areas and we probe into those to make sure things are going right. We will communicate. We have communicated with staff at all levels, both informally and formally. There are some required communications we'll make with you, and I'll run through these rather quickly. They're all there for you to read. A lot of this is nothing to report. But we talk one about our responsibility under generally accepted auditing standards. And essentially these standards require us to express an opinion on the financial statements. The financial statements are the responsibility of the district and administration, and they have taken that responsibility very seriously. Our job is to express an opinion on the financial statements. Significant audit policies. Your policies are they are in agreement with policies that all other districts are using. The administration has applied them evenly. There is, this year, you have the implementation of GASB number 68 and 71. GASB is the Government Accounting Standards Board. These relate to the pension liability that is on the face of your financial statements now. We'll talk about that later. Judgments and estimates. There's a number of estimates that are in your financial statements. We find that the administration has good basis for these estimates, and we find them reasonable. We've concluded that, again, that they have a reasonable basis for these significant judgments. We have things like allowances for uncollected taxes, useful lives of capital assets, state aid receivable, and some net pension liability information. We had no significant audit differences noted, no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control, and we noted no non-compliance matters to report to the board or to the administration. We had no disagreements with management. We are unaware of administration consulting with any other accountants or any other auditors for a second opinion. That's okay, but if it happens, we are to report that to you. And there was no issues. We discussed things with administration on an ongoing basis during the year. We don't believe that there's anything that we said to administration that caused them to retain us for this past year. So they were not opinion shopping with us as well. And we encountered no significant difficulties in dealing with management in the performance of our audit. We have a few different written communication tools that we use. That's the engagement letter that's come before the board, the management representation letter, which the management signs and say basically that they take responsibility for the financial statements and they've given us everything that we've asked for. And we do confirm that we are independent accountants with respect to Fort Bend Independent School District. With that out of the way, we'll get to the meat of the project here, and we have issued an unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statements, which is the highest level of assurance we can give on financial statements, and we say the financial statements, in our opinion, are materially correct and fairly stated. Our audit was conducted in accordance with governmental auditing standards. There'll be a separate report, a single audit report, which goes over our reports there. I'm going to turn this over to Lupe Garcia, who's going to go through the financial statements with you.
Thank you, Chris. Madam President, members of the board, the next several slides are going to go over some financial highlights of information pulled out of the comprehensive annual financial report. This particular slide presents your statement of net position. Now, there's a unique aspect to governmental accounting. There's two sets of financial statements in your report. There's one set of financial statements on a full accrual basis of accounting, and that's the basis of accounting used by corporate America. And then you have the modified accrual basis of accounting, and that's what you use day to day. This is what you budget on when you refer to the general fund, the debt service fund, capital projects fund. That's the modified accrual basis of accounting. So this particular basis of accounting, full accrual basis of accounting, everything that the district owns less everything the district owes, and what's left over we call net position. You have governmental activities and your business type activities. In fiscal year 2015, the district made a decision to move certain activities that previously were reported in the general fund and in governmental activities and enterprise funds, and thus business type activities. And those were the extended learning, extended day program, and the facility rental. So that's why fiscal year 14 has no totals, because that activity in that fiscal year was presented with governmental activities. For fiscal year 2015, total assets, you're looking at $1.3 billion for governmental activities. The bulk of that's going to be your capital assets, your buildings, equipment, vehicles, and the such. You have total deferred outflows of resources. That's a relatively new term on the face of the financial statements. The bulk of that is going to be related to your pension activities. Chris mentioned earlier that the district implemented FBISD statements number 68 and 71. That brought on to the face of the financial statements deferred outflows of resources and deferred inflows of resources. The biggest amount, though, being that your net pension liability, and that's an amount determined by TRS and their actuaries and audited by the state auditor's office, and that's the district's proportionate share of their liability of its participation in the TRS plan. FBISD 68 is effective for local governments all across the country, so it's not just Fort Bend ISD, it's not just in the state of Texas, it's all over the country. It's an amount that frankly is just for financial presentation purposes only. It doesn't change the way the district funds TRS. You'll still continue to budget for TRS and making contributions to the plan as you have before. So it's strictly a financial reporting requirement at this point to bring that liability which information in the past had been presented in the notes, and now it's just front and center on the face of the financial statements. So total liabilities amount to just over $1 billion. Net position is $244 million in governmental activities. Business type activities, again, net position there is $3.6 million. The bulk of that's going to be capital assets in the extended day program. Investments held at year end at the district. This is as of June 30th, 2015. So at a point in time, total investments total $290 million. You can see the breakout there of the investments. You have various securities and agencies, investments in public funds, investment pools, as well as cash in the bank at $47 million. Total $290. This is governmental and business type activities together. Debt of the district amounted to $906 million. The components of that are listed on this slide. You have general obligation bonds of $833.5 million, and you have deferred amounts, and those are amortized premiums that are recognized at the time the bonds are issued and amortized over the life of the bond. Your debt related to, as a ratio of bonded debt to total assessed value is 2.5%. And in the next few slides, we'll see what 2.5% means in relation to the total assessed value. So this is Fort Bend ISD over the last 10 fiscal years. Debt per student is the green line, and debt to valuation is the red line. Along the left, you have your percentages. That's debt to valuation. So 2.58 is where the district is for fiscal year 15. Debt per student is a little over $12,000. Now, in comparison to districts in the area, this is debt per student. Again, Fort Bend ISD is the green line. You can see districts, Cy-Fair, Katy, Lamar Consolidated ISD, all have higher debt per student totals. Alief ISD is the red line at the bottom. They're a very stable district. They're not growing, of course, so you would expect for them not to have very much debt, and that's why their debt to student totals is where it is. Looking at debt to valuation, again, Fort Bend ISD is there, the green line, just at 2.5%. Cy-Fair, Katy, Lamar Consolidated are all much higher. And Alief, again, trailing there down towards the bottom. So you can see Fort Bend ISD is managing its debt very well in comparison to other districts in the area. Statement activities is in essence the district's income statement, revenues and expenses for the year. 2015 had a little over just under $700 million in total revenue. This is going to make up of property taxes primarily and then state aid. You have total expenses of $690 million. That gives you a excess of revenues over expenses of $6 million. You take into considering transfers and the big amount there, that prior period adjustment, that's the recognition of that net pension liability as of the beginning of the fiscal year of $70 million. And that gets you to the ending net position for governmental activities of $244.8 million. Business activities, again, these are the enterprise fund activities, extended day, facility rentals. There's no activity for 2014, but for 2015, that ending net position there is $3.6 million. To give you a visual illustration of the district's expenses on a government-wide level by function, as you would expect, instructional makes up 60% of the district's expenses, followed by student support services, other support services, instructional leadership, general administration is at 2%. Give you an idea of how this looks in a pie chart. Fund balance is something that the community and other users of the financial statements pay a lot of attention to. So looking at your general fund balance at the end of the fiscal year, you have $170 million in fund balance. That's broken up into 4 different categories. Non-spendable fund balance is $4.8 million. This is fund balance that is in a non-spendable form as inventories and prepaid items. You have committed fund balance of $60 million. You can see there that's an increase from 2014. The district made a decision to commit a portion of unassigned fund balance for possible reductions in state aid. So that's been set aside in the committed fund balance line. We have assigned fund balance of $5.9 million and unassigned fund balance of $99.2 million. Your other governmental funds represent capital projects fund, debt service fund, and your other special revenue funds. That fund balance for all of those funds combined amounted to $89.1 million. Looking at unassigned fund balance over the last 10 fiscal years in the general fund, you can see in 2015, that's between 15 and 20%. But again, remember, the district made a decision in fiscal year 15 to commit a portion of unassigned fund balance, which was $47 million. If you were add that back in, you'd be much closer to the 25% mark in comparison to previous years.
Right. Right now, your unassigned fund balance sits at about 17.5% of general fund expenditures. If you add the $47 million that you pulled out for potential state loss that you've basically put into a savings account, that would come back up to about 25%. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia and Mr. Bro. We appreciate your presentation. Do we have questions from the board? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the comprehensive annual financial report.
It's just a general question. The interstate expense from the pie chart, 5.19%, is that pretty standard with our peer districts in this area?
That's actually a pretty good number. That percent is not a 5% interest rate to make sure. Okay, so that's a percentage of the interest that you're paying, and that's an issue with a lot of districts, and that has to do as your debt stretches out. When folks start having longer debt, that interest becomes more a larger portion of that. So you're sitting at 5%, where other districts might be higher.
Thank you.
Madam President, I move to approve action item 6A as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Rice and a second by Mr. Rosenthal to approve the comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2015. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Bro and Mr. Garcia, for being here.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd also like to thank Mr. Bassett, Ms. Egger, and Ms. Schlacks for their hard work pulling together all this information for us to audit. They did a great job.
Absolutely. We know it's a team effort from them and a lot of people working with them to get it all done. So thank you very much, Mr. Bassett, for leading that effort, and to Ms. Schlacks and Ms. Edgar as well. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here tonight. Our next item is item 6B, which is a professional development day waiver for the 2015-2016 school calendar.
Madam President, I move to approve action item 6B as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Rice and a second by Ms. Hellinger. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Our next item is to consider approval for a student coalition to go to Foshan, China.
Madam
Aye.
President, I move to approve action item 6C as presented.
We have a motion by Mr. Rice and a second by Ms. Hellinger. Do we have discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Our next item is a resolution regarding pending action by the State Board of Education regarding proposed changes to rules governing superintendent certification.
Madam President, I move to approve action item 6D as presented.
We have a motion by Mr. Rice and a second by Ms. Hellinger to approve this resolution as presented. Do we have discussion? Mrs. Towson.
I just have two suggestions. On page It's page 12 of the board book, so I guess it's page 2 of the resolution. After paragraph B at the bottom, I think we need an "and" after the semicolon. And then on the last page of the resolution, we have statements A and B. Both have periods at the end, and I just think we need an "and" there as well.
All right.
Resolve that the Fort Bend Independent School District supports adoption of the new rules, and that the Board of Trustees authorize the board president to share this resolution with the SBOE. That's it.
So clearly I should have sent this to you for editing prior to.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So, Mr. Morris, do we need an amendment? This is not a substantive change to the resolution. This is kind of a punctuation change. Do we need an amendment for this, or can we proceed with these?
If there's general acclamation by the totality of the board, you do not need an amendment to make the punctuation change.
All right.
You have my totality.
Okay, Ms. Hellinger, it looks like she's totally in. All right. So we've got a couple of punctuation edits and the word "and" added a couple of places to this. So do we have any further discussion on this? All right. Well, I'm going to, assuming we can approve this now, I'm going to be quickly delivering it to the State Board of Education's voting on this particular item next week with a cover letter that I'll ask for all of you trustees to sign showing our agreement in sending this to the state.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it's not something that Fort Bend ISD would need to come back and handle